And it is really stunning news. Congressman Chris Collins, the Republican from the 27th District who represents many of you in Washington, is right now in federal custody, hours away from being arraigned. He, his son, and another man face serious charges, all stemming from an investigation that we've been covering for more than a year now. But this morning's unsealing of a federal indictment seemed to catch everyone by surprise. We start our breaking news coverage here at midday with two on your sides. Steve Brown, who has been digging through the indictment. Steve?
Michael, I think it's important to point out right here at the outset that it is a crime in this country to share insider information about a publicly traded company. The idea is people inside a company should not have an unfair advantage in stock markets over people who are outside the company. The indictment accuses Collins of violating those insider trading laws. Collins was a member of the board of directors of an Australian company called Innate. The company was testing an experimental drug with hopes that it would help patients with muscular sclerosis. But the drug failed in the trials. Last June, Collins was at a picnic at the White House. The indictment notes that's where Collins got the bad news about the drug trial from the company's CEO via an email. Phone records show allegedly Collins then placed 7 phone calls to his son Cameron before reaching him. The feds say Collins shared the news about the failed Innate drug trial before it was made public. It's alleged Cameron Collins then executed a series of sell orders of almost 1.4 million shares of Innate stock. Selling those shares before the drug trial was made public helped Cameron Collins avoid an estimated $570,000 in losses from the stock's plummet after the news was released. Now, Cameron Collins is also charged, and the father of his fiancee is charged as well. It's alleged that both of those individuals notified several other people of the insider information so they could sell off their stock as well. The indictment also accuses Representative Collins of lying to the FBI to cover up the entire thing. These are serious charges, and it appears that the feds may have a series of cooperating witnesses. Reporting from the Information Center, Steve Brown, Channel 2 News.
All right, Steve, thank you. Two on your side did receive a statement from Collins' attorneys saying the following: "We will answer the charges filed against Congressman Collins in court and will mount a vigorous defense to clear his good name. It is notable that even the government does not allege that Congressman Collins traded a single share of Innate Therapeutics stock. Now, we are confident he will be completely vindicated and exonerated," the statement says, and it concludes with Congressman Collins will have more to say on this issue later today. In the meantime, joining me right now is local defense attorney Barry Covert, one of our Two on Your Side legal analysts. Barry, thanks so much for coming in on what was pretty short notice. Let me get your initial reaction to what I believe is a 30-page indictment here, unsealed this morning, a federal grand jury indicting Congressman Collins and these two others. Your initial reaction to this?
Well, it was obviously pretty shocking to the legal community. It's really the day that we were all surprised by this. I'm certain that Mr. Collins was aware of this ahead of time. There's no reason to believe that his lawyers weren't on notice that there was an investigation, and that if he didn't engage in some type of plea negotiations that there would be an indictment. I'm sure he said, "I'm innocent." He is presumed innocent. He should be presumed innocent. These are very serious charges. It's a 15-count indictment. The statutory maximum for some of the charges, the wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, is 20 years. That's kind of a misnomer, though. We have federal sentencing guidelines. We calculate in our system what is somebody's criminal history category as opposed to what is the offense calculation, and then you have a guideline range. But again, that's premature for us to go to. It is surprising, but we do have to presume him innocent here and make sure that the government proves their case.
Collins is up for re-election this November. He is supposed to be on the ballot facing the man you see on the left side of your screen there, Democrat Nathan McMurray. Channel 2's Claudine Ewing is following kind of the political part of this story for us. Claudine?
Good morning, Michael. Chris Collins is up for re-election in November, as you mentioned. And when I spoke with one Republican strategist today, he said that Collins was basically guaranteed to win. But now that tune is definitely changing. Even though his challenger, Nathan McMurray, the Grand Island supervisor, has not raised a lot of money, the arrest of Collins puts him in a better position. Republican Kevin Hardwick told me on the phone today the thought of Republicans was that Collins would, quote, walk all over McMurray. Not the perspective now. He even called this particular congressional seat cursed based on the last 3 people who actually held the seat. Now, Carl Calabrese told me a few minutes ago by phone that the arrest was shocking to him, but said there's nothing that prevents Collins from running. But he says Collins will have to make the decision if, in fact, he wants to stay in the race or get out.
There is quite the backstory here. Channel 2's Dave McKinley says it's really the culmination of a lengthy probe that started with Congress itself, Dave.
Yeah, it was, Michael. These suspicions, if not allegations, have been around Congressman Collins for quite some time. He's consistently referred to them, though, as a witch hunt. In fact, it was almost a year ago, only 3 days after the House of Representatives Committee on Ethics completed its initial report and confirmed it found enough to continue on for another month, that he used that phrase again.
Can't beat me at the ballot box, so they're trying to beat me in other ways with political accusations that are absurd on their face.
Two of the main complaints that got things rolling was that Collins violated the Stock Act by buying discounted stocks in that Australian company where he was the largest shareholder. And they were filed by an advocacy group named Public Citizen, as well as the late Congresswoman Louise Slaughter, a Democrat representing the Rochester area who passed away earlier this year, but about whom Collins often referred to as, quoting now, a terrible person. This is as recently as a year ago and since then. So, as indicated earlier today, Michael, Chris Collins may himself speak to this sometime this afternoon. It's a developing situation. Of course, we're going to keep our eyes on it and have much more throughout the day.
I've never sold a share of stock. I certainly never made a penny. In fact, we all know the trial ultimately did not work out, so I lost everything.
Well, that is how Congressman Chris Collins addressed accusations of insider trading when I interviewed him last year. And tonight, federal prosecutors don't dispute that statement, but they say that he did, however, commit a crime. And good evening, everyone. I'm Scott Levin.
And I'm Mary Alice Demler. We were the first station in Western New York to bring you the news this morning. Congressman Chris Collins arrested and charged by the feds. Now, this is a story that we've been covering since January of last year. The Western New York Republican has been under investigation for his investment in an Australian company, a company whose stock tanked after a failed drug trial.
And all along, Congressman Collins said the various investigations were part of a partisan witch hunt, and his attorneys again said today that he did nothing wrong. We have team coverage tonight, starting with 2 on your side, Steve Brown, who's been looking at the indictment today. Steve?
Scott and Mary Alice, it's a 13-count indictment, but the way it's broken down, it adds up to 11 charges against all three defendants. They are Congressman Collins, his son Cameron Collins, and the father of Cameron's fiancee. This is all about an Australian drug company called Innate Immunotherapeutics. Sitting on the company's board of directors was Congressman Collins. He was also the second largest buyer of the company's stock. In June of last year, Collins was informed by the company's CEO that a once promising drug it was developing had failed in clinical testing.
This was devastating information for the company. Congressman Collins had an obligation, a legal duty, to keep that information secret until that information was released by the company to the public.
But instead, the feds allege, the congressman immediately called his son and shared that bad news. That would be a violation of securities law. Cameron Collins allegedly shared that information with his future father-in-law, Stephen Zarsky. Days later, Innate publicly announced the failed drug trial, and its stock price tanked, losing 92% of its value. The feds say that Cameron Collins, Zarsky, and others who also received the leaked information were able to avoid losses totaling over $750,000.
Well, we are already seeing the impact in Washington. As Dave mentioned, House Speaker Paul Ryan today called for an ethics investigation into Collins and suspended him from his seat on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. He's also facing calls to resign from a lot of Democrats, including Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz, Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown, and fellow Congressman Brian Higgins.
Given the gravity of the situation here, given the comprehensive nature of it, it seems to me that serious consideration for resignation should take place.
And all of this leaves a lot of questions for folks in Collins's congressional district, where he's up for re-election less than 3 months from today.
Scott and Mary Alice, good evening. Congressman Chris Collins said he remains, in his words, dedicated to Western New York. And as we heard just a short time ago, not only does he plan to stay in office, but he also plans on running for re-election come November. Now, much of his news conference, 6.5 minutes of it, sounded more like a little bit of a campaign speech. He didn't talk a lot about the charges against him, and he did not take any questions. Chris Collins spent very little of his 6.5-minute news conference talking about the federal charges against him. Instead, he focused on his time as a businessman, entrepreneur, and politician. Several times he expressed his desire to help find a cure for a form of MS.
Over the years, I invested heavily in Innate, became the company's largest shareholder, and an uncompensated member of its board of directors.
Federal prosecutors say as a board member, Collins was privy to information before the general public, like a failed drug trial for that MS drug.
Many have speculated about my relationship with Innate. Here are the simple facts. My connections with the company are well known. I believe I acted properly and within the law at all times with regard to my affiliation with Innate.
Prosecutors disagree, saying Collins shared insider trading information with his son, who allegedly in turn shared it with others so they could sell off or attempt to sell off before stock prices plummeted.
When it became clear that the drug I and others believed in fell short of our hopes and expectations, I held on to my shares rather than sell them. As a result, the significant investment I made in the company, worth millions of dollars, were wiped out. That's okay. That's the risk I took.
Here's the catch. Collins essentially had no choice but to hold on to his stock because trading of Innate stock was halted on the Australian exchange, and Collins was already being investigated by a congressional ethics committee. Collins said he plans to defeat the charges against him.
The charges that have been levied against me are meritless, and I will mount a vigorous defense in court to clear my name. I look forward to being fully vindicated and exonerated, ending any and all questions relating to my affiliation with Innate.
Now, one of the criticisms we've heard throughout the evening, aside from the fact that Congressman Chris Collins did not take any questions at this news conference, was the fact that he held the news conference here in downtown Buffalo and not within his district. As you heard from the Congress member just a few seconds ago, he says he plans on clearing his name. That's going to be his focus from here on out. And he said because of that, he will not be talking about Innate or the problems tied to it, the allegations against him, unless it's in a courtroom. Live in downtown Buffalo tonight, Heather Lee, Channel 2 News.
Erie County Republican Chair Nick Langworthy joins me now. Nick, when did you get word that this indictment was coming?
It was approximately 7:30 this morning. I got the first phone call that this would be happening, so I didn't get a tremendous amount of lead time before the public did.
What was your response, and what's the official response of the party?
I mean, I'm tremendously shocked. It's been a very difficult day as we've dealt with the charges that are in the indictment. Learning of these things. Obviously, we've known there's been some controversy surrounding the company, but to see that there was actually going to be an indictment levied against the congressman was something I certainly wasn't expecting in this election. I'm also very surprised that the federal officials would bring an indictment this close to an election period after the period of nominations have closed. I was quite surprised by that sort of tactic.
The congressman says he continues to run. Do you support his re-election?
Well, I haven't had a conversation with Chris Collins for quite some time. I was anxiously, waiting to see his press conference and what he was going to say today. We haven't really communicated at all about this topic. What I'm critically committed to is making sure that, the representation for this seat is consistent with the taxpayers and their point of view in this seat, which is these are conservative Republicans, and the values that they present are those that support the president.
Is it possible that the party could pull its support from the congressman?
I don't believe that there's been any discussion of pulling any support. I mean, he is the nominee of the party. The nomination period has closed. He says he's going to continue a campaign. If he changed his mind, we could discuss other candidates. But those are other avenues and conversations that have to be said in the days and weeks to come. I take him at his word that he's a candidate for re-election. But I think that the values represented by Chris Collins are more in line with the district and the congressman's support of President Trump. His opponent, Nathan McMurray, is a radical liberal that supports Nancy Pelosi.
Okay, we appreciate you coming in today, Nick Langworthy. Thanks for joining us.
Okay.
Well, we are already seeing further impact in Washington. House Speaker Paul Ryan today called for an ethics investigation into Collins and suspended him from his seat on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. He's also facing calls to resign from a lot of Democrats, including Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz, Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown, and fellow Congressman Brian Higgins.
Given the gravity of the situation here, given the comprehensive nature of it, it seems to me that serious consideration for resignation should take place.
One person who has not commented, President Trump. Collins, of course, was one of the first members of Congress to endorse him for president. Well, the 27th Congressional District is regarded as one of the most Republican-leaning districts in New York, but has today's development changed the level of trust that some of Collins's longtime supporters have in him?
2 on Your Side's Ron Plants talked to some of Collins' constituents, and he continues our team coverage tonight.
From the Clarence Public Library to the district office of Representative Chris Collins in a suburban office park, it was a relatively quiet evening, even as the political establishment is now roiling.
As far as I can determine, even his staff didn't know that this was going to happen today. So there's shock.
Hardwick, a GOP member of the Erie County Legislature and Canisius College political science professor, feels his party leaders don't have much choice here.
If the Republican powers that be determine that he's just unelectable, it's almost impossible to get him off the ballot.
So does this change Collins's ballot prospects? I asked some folks in his home community.
For him to say today that he did nothing wrong, that's totally unacceptable.
His action and the way he's been behaving and all his work, and I'm not pleased with him.
I think I would just wait and see it, but the judicial process plays itself out. Again, I voted for him. I'm Republican. But if he broke the law, he broke the law. If he didn't, he didn't.
This is something he brought about, not something anybody else did.
Do you think he should step down?
Yeah, that would be an awfully good idea.
Ron Plants, Channel 2 News.
Thank you, Ron. Well, this story is far from over. Make sure to stay up to date with the latest developments right now over on WGRZ.com and the free 2 on Your Side app. Head over there right now to read the entire indictment and watch Collins's full news conference from earlier tonight.
Congressman Chris Collins vows to stay put and continue to run for re-election. The question now, can he manage that and fight federal charges? Congressman Tom Reed said this to our Dave McKinley Thursday.
Well, obviously, these are very serious allegations, and I believe your concern raising that question is a legitimate concern.
A sentiment echoed by others in the GOP. The National Republican Congressional Committee stopped short of backing Collins' decision to carry on with his campaign, saying they will let the facts come to light and trust the judicial system.
This is as raw politics as it gets.
It's been a tough week for Nick Langworthy and fellow state Republicans who watched as Chris Collins was arrested, staked his place on the congressional ballot, and then stepped away from the ballot, all in a 4-day stretch.
His legal trouble has become a distraction upon the district, upon the campaign. This is the best decision for the Republican Party.
But now the state primary has already passed, meaning a much tougher road to look for a new Republican candidate to run for New York's 27th congressional district.
Obviously, this unfortunate set of circumstances is not one that the party anticipated, that the party wanted. But we have to function within the parameters that were given at this late date.
To fill Collins' shoes, Langworthy says, the Republican Party will now vet, interview, and select their best possible candidate. But before they can do that, Collins' spot has to become available, and it's too late in the race for him to just drop out.
We believe that we have mechanisms in place, for Congressman Collins to come off the ballot.
Time is running out for local Republican leaders to pick their candidate for the 27th Congressional District.
Tonight, all of the people vying for the seat made their pitch to those in charge of making that decision. 2 on Your Side's Ron Plants spoke with all of them.
After David Bellavia dropped out, 9 potential nominees went behind closed doors to speak to the 8 GOP party chairs here at Batavia Downs tonight. Now they've got a decision to make.
We are listening to these candidates. Everybody that walks in the room today is going to be considered. Otherwise, we wouldn't be, holding this interview. This isn't for the cameras. Otherwise, we'd let you guys in.
Commissioned a poll that I paid for to find out what the issues are here in the congressional district? I think I pretty much know because I've been representing this area for 12 and a half years.
This is not something that's going to be handed to anybody. You might get the nomination, but you got to go out and run a campaign. The people of this district expect someone to get out there and run a campaign and run hard. So they want to see some passion, some fire, some energy.
Obviously, it's a very condensed time that you're going to have to run a congressional race, and you have to raise money very quickly, and you have to get out there very quickly. You have to get your name out there very quickly.
I think it's critical that every candidate travel across this district and talk to as many businesses and as many residents as they can, because that way you get the perspective of the people.
I've a lot of experience taking on tough challenges. Certainly, there has been no more effective or consistent critic of the governor and his economic development policies and the corruption going on.
One reason I'm here today is how many people in my district have been encouraging me. I mean, as close as yesterday, doing door-to-door in my district, and people, saying, I really hope that you get this.
I have not gotten the call or the little nod that, okay, you are the front runner. So, I think I present a compelling case. I think I would make a good candidate. But again, that's for others to judge.
I think they understand my nature. I mean, do we want somebody that's going to go there and blend in with the wallpaper? Or do we want somebody that's going to go there and light things up a little bit?
What happens if the court rules against our side of the aisle and Chris Collins stays on the ballot? That's way above my pay grade. I'll let the lawyers worry about that. I'm just concerned about my candidacy.
We are going to move a little slower than we originally thought in naming our candidate. Legal documentation on many things can't be filed until after the September state primary.
Chris Collins vowed to vigorously defend himself in court and then seek re-election. But then 2 days later, on August 11th, he said he was suspending his campaign. With uncertainty surrounding the ability of the Republican Party to replace him on the ballot, just 2 days ago, Collins then announced he wouldn't cooperate with their efforts to get him off the ballot. And today, in a tweet, his campaign cleared up more questions by stating he would not only actively campaign for the seat, but also serve if elected.
The campaign said that the congressman would not only actively campaign for re-election this year, but also would serve if he is elected.
But still facing federal charges of insider trading, Collins' means of campaigning may be far from traditional, as we hear from 2 on Your Side's Dave McKinley.
Despite this latest development, the message on Collins' campaign website as of a short time ago remained that the campaign is suspended. But even if he's unsuspending it, Republican strategist Carl Calabrese doubts you'll see Collins holding traditional campaign events, such as those being held by his Democratic opponent, Nate McMurray.
My guess is his attorneys do not want him making public appearances.
We caught up with Congressman Collins tonight at a restaurant in Newfane where he was attending a Niagara County Republican Meet the Candidates night. We should note that neither his campaign or the party disclosed ahead of time that he would actually be here. One thing we wanted to ask him about is his oft-heard claim that a vote for him is a vote to protect the president. Put all the stuff that you've stated in statements about Nancy Pelosi taking over and Trump being impeached and Kavanaugh being investigated and impeached. Sure. Put all that aside for a minute and
you
tell
can't really
me,
put that aside.
Put it aside and tell me why anyone should vote for someone who is under indictment.
Number one, in America, you are innocent until proven guilty. I have claimed my innocence from day one. I am innocent, and I will be exonerated at trial. And in the meanwhile, we have to talk about New York 27 being a seat, if we were to lose it, could flip control of Congress.
We understand that. Well, no, how can you ask someone to vote for someone who's under indictment, though?
Well, very simple. I'm innocent. So I am reminding people of my 6-year voting record, my relationship with the administration, and the importance of this seat staying Republican to keep Nancy Pelosi from being Speaker, to keep Jerry Nadler from being Chair of Judiciary, to keep Maxine Waters from being Chair of the Financial Services. This is about protecting Trump and the direction of this country for the next 2 years, as opposed to gridlock, investigations, inquisitions, impeachments. It's that simple.
You talk about being exonerated at trial. Your trial date was set today, if you ever get to trial, February of 2020. How effective can a congressman like yourself be with this millstone around his neck?
There is no millstone around my neck. I've been in Congress since the indictment. I'm being treated like I've always been treated. I have not missed a vote. I am sponsoring legislation. I am co-sponsoring legislation. I have folks coming through my office every day talking about the issues important to them. I'm in discussions with the administration. Let me tell you, Dave, nothing has changed in my relationship in Congress, my fellow members, or what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis since then. So there you go. Right there proves.
Does your campaign not say where you're going to be to keep the media away or protesters?
I'm not saying where I'm going to be. Here I am tonight. So there you go.
Did you give insider information to your son?
We'll get in touch with you.
Mr. Collins, can you answer that question?
While this race won't be on all of your ballots tonight, the battle in the 27th Congressional District is getting national attention. Congressman Chris Collins is taking on Democrat Nate McMurray just months after Collins was indicted for insider trading.
The response has been overwhelming and positive. I'm sure there's a few Nate McMurray supporters, but they're not good Republicans. So.
But no, not even good Republicans. Any of them said, dang
one.
it, Chris, I just can't bring myself to vote for you.
Not one single one.
The battle intensified for New York's 27th Congressional District, one that some argue is still too close to call. Last night, Chris Collins declared himself the winner and challenger Nate McMurray conceded. But then, in a sudden twist early this morning, McMurray released a statement demanding a recount because of the tight margins.
And this morning, Chris Collins' campaign is responding to McMurray's request, saying, quote, after tearfully conceding and recognizing his own defeat, Nate McMurray is once again dancing to the tune of the angry mob that just can't accept the will of the voters. Congressman Collins is looking forward to serving New York 27 as he always has.
Now, here's a look at the results right now, according to the New York State Board of Elections, showing Chris Collins has about 49% of the votes, while McMurray has 48. Collins leading by just under 3,000 votes. Our Ron Plant spoke with Chris Collins last night, who says he is focusing on getting back to business in Washington.
Congressman Chris Collins says he is now confident enough to declare victory in his re-election bid and says he fully intends to serve out his term in Washington again, despite the federal charges against him.
I've always said I am innocent of the meritless charges that were lodged. I will have my day in court. It's not coming until sometime in 2020. That's a long time away. My focus now is going back and supporting the Trump agenda, continuing the constituent service, which my district is known for, second to none, of 435 members.
You still have the cloud, though, Congressman,
I have a
hanging
cloud
over you.
I do.
Can you still be effective as a congressman now that you perhaps have been given by another chance to go back by the voters?
Well, certainly. I can assure you, as I've been back in September, never missed a vote. My fellow members, are with me 100%. So whether it's introducing legislation, co-sponsoring legislation, my voting record, all speaks for itself. And I will represent everyone in the district, Democrats, Republicans, independents, with the best constituent service of any member of Congress that we are known for. And I will continue to support our president, to continue to push forward the economic agenda, the defense, the borders. I'm just going to continue to do my job.
Collins says he acknowledges it may be difficult to rejoin some House committees now that Democrats are in power in the House, but he still feels that he can fully serve his constituents in office. Reporting from downtown Buffalo, I'm Ron Plants, Channel 2 News.
Now, earlier today, I got the chance to sit down with the congressman and asked him tough questions for around 45 minutes. Here's what he had to say about his future in Congress and legal challenges if he's declared the winner. If things should not go your way in the trial and you end up, having to, step down.
Yeah.
What's your feeling then? How do you feel about the district, your position? What will your thoughts be going forward?
Well, that's not going to happen. I am highly confident that's not going to happen, but I'm also a realist to say anything can happen these days. I did not even expect to be indicted, and I was.
Right.
So anything can happen. Clearly, if you're convicted of a crime, you're going to step down, of course, at which point there either would or wouldn't be a special election. That's up to the governor. My own guess is
he might not call a special election because it would be, in the summer of 2020 with an election coming in 2 or 3 months, in which case the seat could sit open for a few months.
Is there anyone you would like to see succeed you? Have you designated an heir apparent?
It's not my position to do that.
They, again, want to know, do you promise not to trade your spot in Congress for a better plea deal?
I'm not negotiating any plea deal. I am going to be having my day in court, hopefully in February of 2020.
If you're exonerated, would you run again for office?
I would. Of course I would.